Yeah, so kind of a split family.
Okay,
But
now I
Rod
understand.
and Bob and I grew up like cousins. We were good friends.
So you're actually half brothers.
His dad was my half brother.
We have some treats. I see what you're doing
And
there.
they're my half nephews or whatever.
Okay, different moms.
Kind of like cousins.
You have.
Okay,
Different mother, yeah.
okay.
There's one I grabbed.
Yeah, it's
Now,
complicated.
where did this Claire come
Yeah, he's kind of a late comer.
Okay, you guys
from?
ready?
You went to school in Moldova?
Skyview.
Did you? What year did you graduate?
Oh, thank you.
Crap. That's. Should've known you.
Okay, welcome everyone to the July 8th COSAC meeting. Appreciate your patience. Let's see, let's just roll right into our agenda. Any changes to the agenda, Stephen?
I don't have any.
Okay, did everybody have a chance to review the minutes, the agenda? Any questions or suggestions on those? Then, without objection, we'll approve the agenda and the minutes from our June 3rd meeting. We have first item on our agenda is the first round application, discussion and consideration for the Cooper open space. And so you all will remember this is the parcel that's in the unincorporated county as part of the Cooper application that we did not make a decision on at our previous meetings or review of that project. So, Stephen, were you going to go over that again, or I guess we don't need to, do we?
I was under the assumption that we were we used the word table, but waiting for more things to come in.
More
So
applications
I
and
wouldn't
things
see
like
this
that?
necessarily being in every time on the agenda until we kind of have a better understanding of what is being applied for. While we push the one forward.
I know there are some questions that were remaining about public access and a few things like that haven't been resolved with this piece. This was overall scored lower than the other piece. Then there were some weaknesses in the application, so I believe the committee wanted to work through some of those weaknesses. I talked to the applicant and he said today would work, but he's not here today.
Oh,
That I
okay.
see.
Okay.
So I'm fine, I guess, from my perspective, we kind of think
Okay.
this should take a few more months to go through, so.
Okay, so that was the question I had was, you know, were we looking for action on this item today, or did we need to have any sort of action? So can we just table this item and let the applicant know that we're anticipating some additional information on those issues, I guess, and when we get that information, we'll bring it up on the agenda again? Does that make sense?
Yeah, if there's anything, what would you call it? Anything substantive or changes or whatever.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. Any other thoughts or input on that?
Sounds
Okay.
good to me.
Okay, well, let's just keep rolling then. So we'll move on to the next item, assuming no questions on that from staff for the Cooper application.
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, so the next item is the pre-application for the Kent Baker property that's located northwest of Mendon. And so would you like to give us an introduction on this project, Stephen, or how did you envision this item going?
Yes, Mr. Baker is here. And he came in and talked to me a couple weeks ago and had some questions about his property and wanting to put it into a conservation easement. So we're talking about these two pieces right here, I believe. So no application has officially been filed, and he wanted to come in and talk to the committee and get some, just essentially do a pre-application, get some advice and guidance on filing and what the committee's interest is on the property.
So Stephen, can I put in something else?
Yeah, please, if you want to come to the mic, that'd be.
we are thinking of that 46 acres. I don't know if it would help our position if we put the other 70 acres, which is in the field to the right,
To this one?
that one. Yeah, across the street. That would be bigger, but I'm not sure it has as many accessibility issues. It's good farmland. So I would like to maybe have that considered a little bit, or at least up and down.
What would you like to tell us about the property?
Well, right now, the upper 40, 46 is interesting because it does link to the national forest. And so that gives it an accessibility ability. It also has a gully that runs down through it, which we've been trying to restore back into a more, we're trying to really restore it back into a more native condition. And we're trying to reestablish native grasses and grazing land there. So we're doing a lot of conservation work. We're working with the NRCS and the ag department to do it. That one picture was the lower field. You can just see it, that's from the top of our house looking out. That whole 70 acres all down there, which might be of interest. But this parcel up here is 46 has probably ability to have an access into the national forest. And I think that might make it, that's showing the restoration work we've been doing with stream flows, damming it, trying to build up sediment.
Is that seasonal?
It is seasonal. It doesn't flow, almost never flows in the late season. It's only in the spring, and sometimes not any springs either. Except that I have noticed at the very top of it, we do have obligate wetland plants, a few, which means it flows enough at the top of this gully that it has wetland characteristics. But that's a very limited stretch down about the upper quarter of the gully.
So when you talk about access to the Forest Service,
Yeah.
are you suggesting that there could be public access through the property to the Forest Service?
I was wanting to have that considered, and that's why I'm here.
I
And
mean, you would be in favor of that?
I would be in favor of that. Yeah.
Any,
Connection is on that corner, right? It's a corner
It's right on the
connection.
corner.
But if you look at it, it's really weird, because look at where my property line is, and if you look where the fence line is, it's offset by about 20 feet.
50 feet.
So if you zoom in on that corner, you'll see what I'm talking about. In other words, there. I think that works pretty good. Yeah, there's about 20 feet in there that is a gate that goes straight into the national forest, and it's been there for over 100 years and been used. So
Where does it lead to, or what's the nearest sort of connection to Forest Service trail system or anything like that?
So this is just north of Deep Canyon.
north of
How
Deep
far?
Canyon, if you go west and wind your way up the hill, you end up near Kidman Flat, which has an access route through it.
So that's Deep Canyon right
Deep
here.
Canyon's there.
And then their property is right there.
Yeah. So is that even of any interest to the county?
What's visibility on it?
Visibility?
I haven't been out there, and so I'm not 100% sure. I know there is a county roadway that goes in front of the property, but I'm not sure what its visibility is from the valley floor without doing a little more research into it.
Or from the highway,
Or from the highway.
Valley View?
That
Say
would,
Valley View is,
it's a good distance away.
You can't see it. I walked.
I
the
bet you
field a
can.
while ago, and you can't see the, you can see the valley,
You can see the valley, but
but you can't see,
you can't see the valley view. It doesn't help with that.
valley view at all.
So this would be kind of, I mean, I think for context, sort of a foothill condition
Yeah.
that we would be conserving.
Mm-hmm.
That 7,200 west, is that a dirt road or what type of road is that?
It's paved.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Stephen, what can you tell us about BST in this particular location?
Yeah, we only started looking at potential alignments. We talked to the Forest Service briefly. This part of the Forest Service, to the east of that motorized trail they have up to the Kidman Flats, is not wilderness. So they're good with this through their whole process. But they're open to having a BST through their section of Forest Service there. So we imagine with some slopes and stuff, we'll also be working with some landowners in the area to like cross the line where we need to get to gentler slopes. But yeah, so this would be a connection point.
Has there been a draft of BST through this area?
Yeah, in 2002, the Bear River Association of Governments did the first study looking at plans, and so they have primary and two secondary routes that they've selected all throughout Cache County where they want the BST to go. And then it's just a matter of waiting for landowners to support and funding to be available to make it happen.
So do you know if your trails layer would include that by
I'm
chance?
just pulling it up.
Okay.
I think the road that goes on the east side is one of the proposed routes. Over where my house is.
Oh, down there, yeah.
I think they follow the road, don't they?
There's three. One's like the original shoreline. That's like their preferred. Is to just follow as close to shoreline as they can. That's going to require a lot of work with landowners and stuff. But might not go through ideal locations. So then they looked at utility lines and roads as backup routes.
So it is quite a bit below it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think being supportive of public access, it certainly makes it intriguing, and more land in an application is better. I would say that as well.
I know.
And where that second piece is, if we could put that in it, that would make it better.
Or
That's my feeling. I
Even
mean,
though the road goes through.
yes, I mean, both sides of the road. Again, it's for our work, I would say, we're always looking for more. Now, whether or not this specific project makes sense, that's to be determined, but
yeah.
I think the more acreage that is put into an application, the more appealing it is. I would say that in general.
Yeah.
Does that sound fair, committee members?
Is that total enough acreage to be considered? Is that enough even then? That it would be a good consideration?
Right, I think it's all context and what specific resources can be conserved as part of the application. And so you have highlighted some of those resources that you're interested in conserving, and so.
Yeah. Now, the lower field has really good soils on it, which are kind of unusual sometimes.
It also has a wetland area, doesn't it?
Well, it's a wet spot that's occasionally comes up.
This is all dry farm, right?
Pretty much. We do have irrigation in the lower field, but our water system isn't up to snuff at the present moment. So it would need some major investment and improvement to get it to operate better than what it does.
I think you might want to look at the advantages of the two sections separately, because if adding the other parcel doubled the cost, but all the benefit was in the upper west side, then it might not help. But if it brings benefits to the county, then it might help.
So if it's two separate parcels, would it cost twice as much to develop it?
You're nodding yes? Yeah, you'd be two separate easements.
Two separate easements.
If you wanted to do them separately, but you could do them together as one separate project.
So we could do them as one project, but that's still adding only, you know, now about 100, what is it? 40 and 70, 110 acres, and is that, does that even help?
The 110 is not I wouldn't worry about that part. The question is how strong is this in terms of the checkoffs that we have, relative to.
The
relative
scoring
to-
categories.
The scoring categories relative to other items, and I think, I mean, for me, this would be one where I'd be like, I would be a little bit more, let's see what we get in the mix, including this. Because it's gonna score, but nothing is like way out there on the scoring, like, people are gonna see it, but they're not gonna see it as much.
Right.
There's probably wildlife that goes across it, but as much as another project, that we'd consider wildlife-wise, so.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it'd be, boy, we'd like to stay in touch, and we love every project that comes forward,
Yeah.
but I don't know that this is gonna be like a knock it out of the park project, so. Yes,
Yeah, the
yeah,
previous
the Cooper, Mount Sterling property, yep, I would put it in the same category.
The word that Lorraine McAllister Fund uses is unique and irreplaceable. That gets priority, and so, and not all of the applicants are gonna be unique and irreplaceable.
Yeah,
But if there is one, they probably go to the top.
yeah,
Yeah,
so,
so,
I mean, again, I'm so appreciative to see these projects, and I wanna stay in
Yeah.
touch as we get down the road and we're looking at, wow, what was the best of the rest, so to speak, you know?
okay.
That would
So how much further down the road will it be, or is it gonna take another year? We don't know.
I don't know.
6 months to a year, we'd probably have a good idea.
And once we start this process, and if it was accepted, how long would it take to get to the final, have everything done? Is that 2 to 3 years?
It certainly could be. So, I mean, that's the time frame you should have in mind, I would suggest or say. It's not 2 or 3 months,
No.
it's a long process, and it's multiple steps. The first step, the first round application, you know, it's not a lot of effort. That if you do submit a first round application, at least for all the applications we've received so far, we'll arrange a site visit and go and meet you on the property, and then we'll do a formal scoring if it comes to that.
Okay.
And then the second round is more intense and requires more investment on your part, I think, to meet the application requirements and that sort of
What
thing.
kind of investments are we talking about? Is it cost-wise, is this going to?
At some point, if it was recommended for approval to the second round, you're going to have to put some effort into appraising the property, how much its value is, how much the easement value is. For example, at some point there'll be title and survey work and those kinds of things, and there are other experts in the room that can speak more about this, like the folks from Bear River Land Conservancy that are our next item, or our second item after yours.
And those would be good people to meet, like Bear River Land Conservancy, Utah Agricultural Trust. They can tell you if they have interest, if it matches their mission, then they'll quite often look for matching money, and like if there's matching money, this thing looks very different, I think, as well. But I know with the Agricultural Trust, depending on how much is actually being farmed on that, that's what they're looking at, for example.
The county's not gonna carry the whole ball. You're gonna have to find a partner in order to make this fly.
Yeah, it's just,
And there's entities out there, there's this federal side and Utah Land Trust is private. I think that's most of their funding. A donor, a family member, whatever. In other words, Cache County is gonna take that ball of money and they're gonna spread it with support. That's how it's looking to me personally.
What other questions can we answer for you for now?
Now, if I were to summarize, it's not the highest priority on the list. You want to really find something maybe a little bit better, but it still might fly.
If you got a partner in mind,
You know, a partner to help us to be able to fund it.
yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of that depends too on the appraisal process. That's when you start finding out how much money, how much are you willing to take for an easement on that property?
And where it's dry farm, it's probably gonna have a lower appraised value than irrigated land somewhere, and that costs the county less than for the easement, so that's a plus.
Well, our development rights up there give us 4 houses on it.
Mhm.
So either we try to preserve it or we end up with 4 houses, which
4, did you say?
4,
Okay.
well, it's an Ag 10.
Yep.
And that,
It's an original plat, so it would be 4. Hasn't been split yet.
no, if it was split, it was in 1930.
Okay, well, that's,
That doesn't,
we're safe.
so, okay.
Okay, sir. Like I say, you know, you're more than welcome to submit a first round application, and you know, I think based on what Eric said, and it may get tabled like the previous item on our agenda until we see more applications come in. I mean, there is a timeline to spending this bond money,
Yeah.
and this is a volunteer-based effort, you know. Landowners have to volunteer to come in and request participation in this program, and so
But we really need to find a,
What is your timeline for just spending that money?
Councilwoman Buse that's like 5 to 10 years, isn't it?
Oh, okay, for a while.
okay, that's good. But I do need to find a partner to help fund this.
It's best unless you want to make a donation. So, how much of a donation you want to make is also a way to, you know, make the project enticing,
Okay, in other words,
if that makes sense.
so we give up.
Most conservation easement projects have some sort of landowner contribution associated. Not everyone, but I would say most.
Could the contribution be giving up one of
The
sorry.
building lots?
one of the building lots?
Well, based
Or
on
does it need to be monetary?
the, that's,
No, it's not handing a check to anybody. It's saying that if the conservation easement was $300,000, you're taking $150,000 for it, for example. Does that make sense?
that's the
And
donation.
so the other $150,000 is considered a contribution.
Okay.
Okay,
Gabe, you're nodding.
yeah, Gabe. Yeah, so
Yeah.
Yeah,
look at this and,
great.
okay.
We appreciate your interest,
Appreciate you
for
coming
sure.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Claire, did you have
Let's
something?
let's get it in the hopper, see what happens.
Well, yeah, but I don't want to put it in the hopper unless I have the way that I can contribute with a partner or a donation to make it work. Otherwise, I'm just wasting everybody's time.
Well,
But I would really
you might have
rather
to
not
it in the
put
hopper
those 4
before
houses
they'll
in.
start talking about it, so.
We've talked about this, it's almost chicken and egg between the agencies involved. One of the agencies has to start the ball rolling, and then you go to the next one. So it could possibly start here, and then they would pick it up, or start with them. You mentioned, I think this says that only part of, is it the triangle-shaped parcel would be included?
Yeah, but the county's going, that triangular piece really belongs to the 70 acres.
Oh,
And it's cut off and there's no connectivity. They would really want me to change the parcel line so that it's all on 13. So we would eliminate that parcel and it would just become 13. And that's what I'm working on now.
Okay.
Good.
So it would pay us to just go ahead and at least get that first
Yes.
line application in and then
Yes.
start working on these partnerships.
I would apply.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no penalty if it doesn't go forward, I don't think.
It's, I think, minimal effort on your part, some minor effort on our part or whatever, but at least it's
Well, you're saying,
it's in the rotation.
yeah, the application has been filed.
Okay, and then we can then come back and revisit it and do whatever changes we
Yes.
need. If it's-
You can't do that unless if you get a lot of groundwork behind you and then you come in and apply, you're further down the road. You need to apply and then go to work.
Okay, apply first.
You could look at, we have a couple others that have gone that far, you could look at them and see the language they used and
Okay.
the priorities and so forth.
Yeah, I think, Stephen, am I right? Mr. Baker would have access to previous applications and that sort of thing, and you can see what they've pulled together.
Okay.
Is there a list somewhere just listing what things you're looking for?
Yep.
Yes, and I can get you that.
Okay, good, and maybe another
Yeah.
application. See what I'm up against. And see where I can.
So the next item on our agenda has been through these steps. It's the first project that is in, through to the second phase. And so, we're also learning as we go, so, yeah,
Sounds good. Thank you,
great.
everybody.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item is the second round application, and this is discussion and consideration of the open space application for the Elkhorn Ranch Phase 2 project. And Stephen, did you have anything you wanted to present or discuss at this point?
I don't have anything pre-discussion to present. I know the
Okay.
applicant is here and,
Okay.
or the representative.
Okay.
Both are here and are able to present on it.
Okay, so we'll have them come up then, is that the idea? And make a presentation for the application, or what would you think?
I think having them come and present on what the second phase, what they presented. As you saw on Friday, they sent some updated information that I sent out to the group that was in the packet. And so they'll probably go spend some time and review what they're submitting.
Okay,
And then if there's any questions.
okay. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Come on up, Gabe, please. And state your name and who you're with for us, please, for the record.
Stephen, do you have, I was just gonna go through the application I sent on Friday.
Yeah, I can plug that in.
Okay.
For some reason, Friday was-
My name's Gabriel Murray. I'm with Bearer Land Conservancy. I'm here representing Joe Furman, the Elkhorn Ranch Phase 2 application. You can also just bring up what I sent on Friday.
I have it up here. Any part in particular you want me to go to?
I guess I can just, do you guys want me to just walk you through this? This was sent out on Friday. I'm happy to just walk through and try to answer any questions, or is there something in
Friday was
specific
kind
you're
of a
looking for?
busy, a bit of the holiday, so
Yeah.
I have not reviewed it. It'd be great to at least I'd love to be taken through it.
Okay.
Especially if there's new information.
Yeah, okay. So what I presented was essentially a summary that, we had brought this application before you in April. You had provided a recommendation to the Cache County Council. That recommendation was taken to them. They reviewed it, and then they made their approval for this project to move on to a Phase 2 or Round 2 application. And so with that in mind, you know, the next step on a lot of these projects is essentially trying to determine the value or come up with an estimated value for the project. I provided a little bit of discussion in terms of, if you want to go to the top, in terms of how we kind of came about establishing an estimated conservation easement value and value for the project. I know that a lot of people see the appraisal as a method for determining value. The challenge with getting an appraisal at this point in the process is that that appraisal is essentially not valid for the purposes of doing the easement or for the purposes of pursuing NRCS funding. And the reason that that appraisal is not valid is because effectively there has not been enough due diligence for an appraiser to go out and accurately determine a value for the property. And so instead what we've proposed and what we've done before with the Natural Resource Conservation Service is to get a broker's price opinion and essentially have a real estate broker come out to the property, establish a highest and best used value based on their experience and based on comparables. And then that kind of establishes what the property is worth at its kind of highest and best use. And then we apply a diminution that basically says, we look at other conservation easements that have closed and we said, you know, what is the reduction in value as a result of placing a conservation easement on this property? And so when I talked to Nature Conservancy and when I looked at some of our other projects that we'd worked on, we came up with this kind of 80% diminution value. Now that's fairly high, but it's reflective of where the property is located. So if you zoom out from the property, you'll notice that it's surrounded by development. And that development pressure is all around the property, and so that kind of drives that diminution value up. And so when we looked at comparable properties that were also surrounded by development pressure that had similar characteristics and settings, we kind of came up with that 80% as being fairly consistent.
Will you help me with understanding diminution?
Diminution.
Yes.
Yeah, so diminution is essentially, you know, you have what a property is worth if it's sold kind of on the market because there's very few restrictions. There's obviously there's existing easements, rights of way, different things. But once you place a conservation easement on that property, it restricts its uses. And that restriction, that is essentially like a loss in value. And so that's what that diminution kind of says. It says, you know, 80% of the value has now been taken away due to the result of placing a conservation easement on the property.
Is it fair to say
The reverse of that is, this is the value that you're paying for.
Yeah, and the reverse of that is you're paying 80%, and that's what it's worth.
You know, in this case, the suggestion is there's still 20% value there
as
with
farm
the
ground?
easement on it as
Yes,
farm ground.
yes, because
Productive
the
working
property
land.
can still be sold
Yes.
with a conservation easement on it. And so it still has a value. Go ahead.
So, and do they figure that after all the development things have been put in place or before all the development stuff has been put in place?
So an appraiser will go through and basically do kind of what it's like a before and after appraisal. And so before, there is no restrictions. So effectively, they're just looking at the property without a conservation easement deed, with no restrictions, as is. And they're saying, this is what it's worth.
At this instant in time.
At this moment in time.
Land only, just as is.
Just as is, if it was brought to the market, no restrictions, brought to the market, this is what we think it would go for.
Yep.
And then they look at and say, okay, now that we place this specific conservation easement on it, with this set of specific restrictions,
Yes.
what do we think the land is worth now? And that's that difference,
And that difference is what we're looking
what we're looking to
to
fund.
pay. Yep.
And that's the conservation easement value.
Okay. Yep, got it.
So what's the number that's represented there?
So the number represented there is the broker's opinion if it was listed on the open market with no easement.
So $5 million.
Yep.
And then you change, then, so what would the easement value be?
So if we keep scrolling through, we would then apply that 80% diminution and we would come up with the easement value being approximately $4 million.
Okay. So we're reducing his value by that delta,
Yes.
okay?
Yep.
Okay.
And so then where does the money come from to do the deal? And so what we've proposed in this application is that the landowner is willing to donate 15% of that conservation easement value. Bear River Land Conservancy is prepared to raise 48%. And then we're looking for the county to fund the remaining 37%. And I should say that that is based on the total value, so that's the total project value. So we estimate the total project to cost 4.1. Sure.
But isn't it the difference that we're paying for of those two numbers, not the total 4.1?
So that's what I would like to bring before you is, are you open to paying for the total cost of the project? Because there are project costs beyond simply easement value, and that's what I've proposed in this budget. Because according to the ordinance that was passed, it was, you know, for all costs associated with completing a transaction.
Yeah, I guess we're getting to, are we trying to get to 4.1?
No. From the county? No.
No, what are we trying to get,
So
what is
4.1 is the total project cost
what he
to do the
has there.
easement.
1.5 is,
What he's asking.
What I'm asking for from the county. But the total project cost is not only the easement value, but also the cost to the contractors to do all the due diligence, the cost to BRLC for us to do the project, and then also the stewardship and defense fee.
I guess the piece I'm missing is, we're essentially, 4.1 was almost the value of the total land.
No, the land was 5.
80% of the total land. I'm just, like, that's a huge part of a conservation easement being.
That's typical. I've heard 90% on some, if it was
Because
more
of the
urban.
location.
Yeah.
The value is way beyond agriculture.
If it was dry land,
Yeah.
it might be 20%.
Yeah.
If there's no development potential.
Or if it's.
Here, it's the
if
development
it's-
potential is
if
very, very
it's-
high.
Yeah.
In some of the
Yeah.
projects, if it's
Yeah.
one unit per 10 acres.
Okay, yeah, I just had to reverse, things in my head.
Now, if my understanding right too, is the other benefit to this is later the taxes be reduced because it is not sellable.
Well, it stays in Greenbelt?
Yeah.
No, I mean, they would have to qualify for Greenbelt still. The easement does not pre-qualify you for Greenbelt. You still have to maintain an agricultural operation
Okay.
in terms of yearly county taxes.
Yeah, it's still, well, yeah, that's what I mean.
Now the landowner donation may qualify as a contribution under IRS code, but it would have to, that's between the landowner and their accountant and their attorney.
How good do you feel about the federal funding in this budget?
I'm pretty confident in the federal funding that we're representing.
What about other funding sources? State?
Yeah, so as is, we've not proposed pursuing state funding. The Lee Ray McAllister Fund did get 1 million this year, but that's 1 million to be spread throughout the state with numerous land trusts applying. So we have not included it in this budget.
Have you talked to the Utah Land Trust?
Utah Open Lands?
Yeah, or whatever they
About,
contributing.
that's not really the nature of how that deal works. So Utah Agricultural Land Trust would be much like Bear River Land Conservancy. They would be bringing a project before you to receive funding.
All right.
They're not necessarily going to be funding a project.
Okay. All right.
Would we expect that the Luray McAllister Fund would have any projects better than this? It seems like they kind of like showcase projects rather than 100 small ones.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware that multiple applications have been submitted. You know, now, are they going to outrank this application? That's for that committee to decide.
Is this submitted?
No, so one of the challenges with Lee Ray McAllister is I have to have matching funding, and it goes back to that who goes first.
Okay, so when is that application due?
That application is due August 18th.
Okay. So that could still be submitted.
Yes, we could still apply for that funding, should you not be prepared to.
So if
What
this-
I wonder is if we leave
Contingency.
an amount open with an expectation for them to, I mean, if they know that we've got this much X behind it and they've got a small piece of their million that they need to use. That if we choose to do this,
Just throwing out numbers, if the county's part's $1.5 million, if McAllister took half of that, that would get the county down to under 20%, which is. a
Yeah,
number
that would be
I-
highly unlikely. That would be me taking almost all the money out of Leroy McAllister this year.
Won't happen.
now this is a big number, the 1.3 of our total. First of all, I do not mind the helping on the expenses. That's not, the bigger number is the 1.5 that shakes me just a little bit more than the other.
It's a lot.
Of our 20 million, you know,
Yeah,
that's a big chunk, but I do not, I don't mind that other part, because I think we can get more deals done if we're helping out there. Particularly if Bear River Land Conservancy will,
yeah. I mean,
we'll spend
yeah,
some time on some of these
our mission is to, continue to move easements forward, but,
Yeah.
We have our selection process as well,
Yeah,
for projects. And we want to ensure that we, complete good deals, so that's where we're at.
Let me ask on the broker,
Broker's price
the
opinion.
numbers don't surprise me, it's about what I would have expected.
Okay.
The broker, they have any relationship to the applicant, or would they be a
No,
listing?
they are
broker,
a
or-
third party, they are separated.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, and they were hired by Bear River Land Conservancy.
Would that
Okay.
be a detailed, would we get a detailed listing of all of those fees provided to the county?
Of the outsourced expenses to contractors, yeah, we could provide that to you. Yep. It would be an estimated cost at this point. In terms of the broker's price opinion, it has been attached to this application.
Anything else you want to review with us, Gabe? And what's been submitted for round 2?
I don't think so. I think this is, predominantly, again, when this project was ranked, it was ranked high. It had a lot of the values you were looking for. A lot of that public viewability or that public, presence that you get is gonna also come with higher values, right? Anytime you're looking at a piece of property that's along a major highway or a major road next to a valley gateway, your property values are gonna be high as well, because that's also gonna lead to increased development value.
If you mind, do you guys have a draft of what that easement will cover? Like, what uses would be allowed, what uses would be prohibited? I'm
Yeah.
assuming that you have a proposal in mind when it comes
Or a
to.
template?
Or a template. or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
that
we could provide
the
you a
property owner
template.
Want to see?
Yeah, yep, it would largely follow likely the NRCS minimum deed terms. But we do have a conservation easement template in general, if you'd like to see what's being restricted. But I will say that most conservation easement deeds, they take time, and those terms are negotiated, and they do somewhat change over time. If there are certain things that you are looking for in a conservation easement, then I think it would be better to have you tell us what those are. But we're happy to provide you with a draft template. Just know that it's subject to change and likely to be discussed with the county attorney.
I think, I've participated in and read a lot of conservation easement documents, and so I'm very familiar with them, but I think there could be others on the committee that are less familiar with them, and it'd be helpful to kind of understand, what's in those types of documents, so.
There might be specifics within the text of the county bond as well, that where the county's priorities might be different from the land
Yeah.
trust.
Yeah.
Public access is one, but that's apparently not on the table here.
Right.
But if there are other things in the bond text and objectives, you might
Yeah.
take a look at that, compare it to the standard format for an easement.
Yeah, so again, all of that would be somewhat tailored, right? So we would be making sure that some of those things like the waterways are preserved, you know, that the open space is preserved, so that there's limited development that's allowed through the easement document. You know, a lot of those items would be kind of in that drafting of that specific easement document.
Gabe, is it possible to put in there for future landowners that there could be a trail, a public trail put in?
No, not with the major source of funding that we're bringing to the table.
Okay, I guess the reason I was bringing that up is like, you know, there's farms down the road that become owned by nonprofits in these type of settings. And if that was, like, let's say down the road, it became preserved almost as a working farm that people could access if there was a...
Like an agro-tourism?
Well, what is it? Is it Willer Farm in Salt Lake?
Mm-hmm.
You know the farm I'm talking about? It becomes surrounded by a development, and then it becomes a little unique, and let's just say, I don't know who lives there 50 years from now, but, you know.
Furmans will still live there 50 years from now.
Joe's still there. Yeah.
I have confidence.
Sorry to doubt Joe. But, you know, I was just thinking,
Yeah.
if it became something like that.
So, I mean, I think
where
you know,
the working changes of this farm.
Yeah, I mean, having public come onto the farm, I think, is still at will to the landowner.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
The easement doesn't tell the landowner that they can't allow the public to come.
Right.
It's just whether or not it's a component of the easement document.
Yeah.
So would the easement document be silent on that, or would it?
It would depend. It would depend. The holders of that easement document would have to look at those uses and decide if they are, you know, in line with the conservation values that are being preserved.
Okay.
Yeah. If we went and built 100 trails over it and you could no longer farm it, then
Right.
that would no longer be in line with the intent
I could see that.
of the conservation easement document.
So, just to sort of summarize that, it's not that, it's possible that the easement document would not prohibit that use. It
Correct.
could be subject to current or future landowner determination, whether or not they want to provide for something like that, as
Yes,
long as
it's
not in conflict with
As long as it's not in conflict with the
overriding
conservation
easement.
values, yeah. And NRCS would have to review that, and so would Bear Land
Yeah,
Conservancy.
there's a process, and that process is spelled out in the easement document.
Yeah.
If you have to seek approval for making changes.
Yeah, and I guess you know, I don't know what you're submitting, but part of the conservation easement that we see as a county is that visibly, this isn't something aesthetic for the public
the open space.
Yeah, the open space. And so perhaps they would be, way down the road, someone would be interested if there was something along the waterway there. If it didn't interfere with the agriculture at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be considered.
Without affecting Joe's ability to determine anything or future landowners' ability to determine anything.
Yeah.
Those are good things to kind of discuss and talk through. Okay, anything else for now, Gabe?
I would say that, you know, we're seeking a recommendation. So if you're not prepared to make a recommendation, I would like to know what would be required to get to that point, or if we need to have further discussion.
What is your timeline on the recommendation?
I mean, our timeline is, you know, sooner
Now.
the better, right? Because, you know, we have an application process for both, you know, if we need to go to Leroy McAllister and look to see if they have any funding available, that window is closing.
Yeah.
And then also our window to go to NRCS would be this fall.
Okay.
And we have to move the project forward to get there.
Okay. I think, yeah, we'll have a discussion
Okay.
right now, and if there's questions, we'll make that known and request some additional information.
You're to the
or-
point where you could take a recommendation from us now.
Yes.
Does Lorraine McAllister have a committee similar to this with individuals that could be talked to informally and just say, here's an opportunity, what do you think? And see
Yeah.
if the lights go on?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always that opportunity. Like I said, it's 1 million statewide.
They don't have any leftover from last year at all.
No, not that I've been informed of.
Okay. Okay.
They have spent more than $1 million on a project before, right?
Yeah, but they've had bigger funding.
Possibly, but this year's notice of funding basically said we intend to spend small amounts of money on numerous projects.
Okay, good to know.
So that is in their notice of funding, and I'm happy to provide that to you.
Okay, yeah, that changes things.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else for Gabe?
I have a question.
Yes.
You indicated your timeline, for your federal funding. What is your timeline with that? I'm familiar with what our county timeline is like for funding, but what would yours be?
Right, so we would be looking at an application in October and then finding out if we were successful probably in January or February.
We could wrap this up within 8 months, potentially?
I wish it was that fast.
I mean,
A
you would
year-
find out about funding.
We would find out
within
about
that
funding, but
timeframe,
we would still have the process. But I would say if you're willing to commit to the project, I'm confident enough. So it's required.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you
it's
have to
required.
For your application process to go in and
Yep,
make that happen.
yep. And it'd give us confidence to move forward with the project and begin initiating this due diligence process. So it would speed up the process. Now, I'm not going to say the process is fast because of the amount of back and forth that we have to go through with NRCS to close a deal.
To close, yeah. Usually the funding is guaranteed, but it's the process of working through the bureaucracy of the thing.
Yep.
That's been my
Yep.
experience. And that could be a year to closing, or who knows? It's
Yeah.
gonna take some time to close, after the funding is guaranteed.
Okay. Any other questions for Gabe? Okay, thank you, Gabe.
Okay.
All right, committee members, I guess what I would envision, this is our first go-around, right? And so there's probably questions we have. I don't know if there's deliberations we need to have, that sort of thing, but obviously, we would be in a position to make a recommendation to the council on this project, and that recommendation could be for it could be for exactly what they've asked for. It could be something different. It could be a dollar amount, I suppose, right? Or a percentage amount. My thoughts are, obviously we're still fairly early in this program. We haven't seen really, there haven't been any other applications that are, would score as well as this one. So it's a big project for the county, and it may it perhaps could be one of the bigger projects ultimately in terms of dollar value, not necessarily an acreage size or anything like that. So 1.5 million is 7.5% of the total bond proceeds, right? So just to put it into context. So those are my thoughts. What are other thoughts?
My thoughts are the uniqueness of the property, its history, its view capacity of the Wellsvilles, a family who is willing to go forward with it, and you've got a gentleman here who says he's got the money to come with it. That's a long ways down the road. They've jumped through a lot of hoops, and they're ready to go. Nobody else has come forward with participating money at this point, and I'm in favor of saying yes.
What are you thinking, Claire?
I'm thinking I agree with all of those things. This is unique and it is farther down the road. The 37% county share was higher than I would have, well, it's not my money to spend, but it's higher than numbers that I've heard from the county council on that, on what they're expecting to be the county share. So, I mean, my vote would be yes, but with that share open-ended and subject to negotiation, maybe with other funding sources. There are some things that the county is not getting on this property that it might on others. So the competition is not between the project and this committee, but between the project and potential other projects. And with the $20 million budget limit total, it's sobering to see the value, you know, that new car looks great on the showroom floor, and then they give you the sticker price, and now you have to make some hard decisions. If we could find other funding, it would be really helpful at this point.
Eric, what are you thinking?
I really like this. I really like this project. I think it's a great project. It'd be the right project. What I worry about is how much of our powder we burn in the process. To me, a $1 million mark is much more appealing to me with perhaps the other funding sources. And one thing, if we were to approve $1 million, then that, number one, that steps us forward, and that invites Lee Ray McAllister to come forward. Of course, they're not going to come up with another $1 million. It's going to be a pro rata share, but this is, I think this matches Lee Ray McAllister to a T. It matches ours very well. And that's why, I mean, that's a big chunk of what we would do still. So.
Good. How about you, Kendra? What do you think?
I understand the reason for the amount that's being asked for. I do appreciate the idea of having some type of contingency on it, that they are applying for other funding, just to show that we are being wise stewards of tax dollars, that we're not just giving it because it's asked for, but we are asking that they look into other additional funding as well. Because right now you're looking at essentially 3 sources of funding. And I think, I mean, I understand that there's not a large pot of money out there to apply for, but I think at least attempting to pursue it to show that it was tried would be a wise way to move forward on it.
And to that and what's been said here, I think if we can recommend an amount of money to move forward, that does, whatever that is, does set them up to increase their likelihood for whatever other funding there is.
One comment I'd like to make is that there is some wiggle room with the landowners. If we give some wiggle, in these negotiations that I've seen, everybody has to wiggle a little to make this fly. If they went from, say, 15% to 17 or 18%, and we went to $1.1 million, we're so close that I hate to see it go down for $500,000 of total funding in the package. You know? And we haven't challenged, we're going on the broker's appraised value. You know, they have to put a value to start.
Yeah, yeah.
And so.
And by the way, we could say a percentage up to X million, you know, a percentage of the project up to 1 million or whatever.
That's more in line with what I was thinking we would do, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have kind of a general question of the role of this committee in getting into the dollar details and what the county council would like us to do. They're gonna start from scratch probably when it goes over there. But,
That's possible.
how specific should we get? Should we name a dollar figure or more a range of criteria, guidelines, et cetera, et cetera?
Let's ask Catherine.
It's our first one,
I
so.
know, it's our first one too.
I would.
Joe, do you want to comment on what I just said? Is there any wiggle room? You've traded cattle all your life.
I appreciate your concerns, I do, and, I can see where you're coming from, but it is what it is, and, I'd like to see it go through. I've been trying to get this done for 150 years, at least. I was on the original committee with, Larry and Chris, and when the last bond failed in 2008, and, now here we are again, and, I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to survive another round. So, every year that goes by, makes it tougher for us. Prices do increase. So, you know, if I got the easement back in 2008, it would have been a lot less money. And, another few years would be a lot more money, so that's something to consider too. Sometimes I feel like, Donald Trump would be better if I kept my mouth shut, but, yeah, that's how I feel, so.
I like that your family was willing to put a value on it. The problem I see in agricultural farming,
True.
I can drive through where I live. It's not only, I won't put a value on it, it's hell no, I'm not gonna put a value. I'd rather have the land than the money. And I'll take my chances.
That's true, that's true. And this is the family right here. My daughter, and her family are gonna be the ones that'll take it over. We'll take the money and pay off the other two, and, hopefully things will work out. There is some contention as to what's going on, but, that's the way families are, I think.
Well, yeah, that's how it works.
It is, yeah.
You can take the name off of the family, you could call them XYZ, and that's how it plays. It'll play.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I know the decision is, up to you and, then up to the council, so. Say yes and vote for through. And one thing I'd like to do is, round those numbers up, you know, 1.985. Let's round that up to 1.498, 1.5. Let's do that. Make it slicker. I mean, that's not gonna kill any of us, but.
Well, now his cattle trading's coming out.
Sounds more like horse trading. Which,
Well, that's what it is, I mean.
You know,
yeah,
it's
but
600,000.
that's not what we need to do, you know, as a committee meeting, but go ahead, Clay.
600,000 for a family is a big contribution.
Absolutely.
It's noted, yeah.
Absolutely. And Councilwoman Buse, did you have anything more to say about
Yeah,
the council?
I would say to set a number to the council, a recommendation with a number.
Not a percentage?
I would generally agree that I would say the options that the committee has in front of them is if we were to recommend it, you could recommend it as it's presented, but if you wanted to add conditions into it to define what those conditions are for the council to consider. In the end, the council is the approval authority and they can take that recommendation as they may, but providing that detail would be helpful, I believe.
At least from, I'll say that at least from other projects that I've seen across the state, that sort of thing, a program like ours would play a meaningful role in projects we choose to fund. And
in general, what I see is projects or programs that come in more or less 25% increments, you know, it could be a 25% contribution from the county and 50% from the NRCS and 25% from other sources and possibly including landowner contributions and that sort of thing. Eric was talking in general around $1 million. That appears to be in the neighborhood of a 25% contribution from the county. I think this is a meaningful project. I think we should be talking about at least, you know, $1 million for this kind of project. 5% of the total bond leaves a lot of capacity for a lot of other types of projects, and I'm not sure there's going to be one that is in the same context as this one, with this much acreage, you know, in total, in the bigger picture with the additional lands that are also protected right now.
We did have discussion about one that's in the Gateway area, a big project that was estimated with matching here and there a couple $1 million for 5 times the acreage and more visibility. So that's again where you get comparing one to the other.
Yeah, I think
I would say this is an example of a bird in hand versus 2 in the bush kind of thing, right? That project hasn't, a project similar to that hasn't come forward, and so we don't know if there's going to be that kind of project that comes forward, right?
Does this set a precedent for future projects, expectation?
I think in some ways it does, right? We're looking for projects that are important to all of the citizens of the county, and those that can really hit the ball out of the park are going to be the ones at the top of the list.
But this scored high too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, that goes along with that precedent.
Okay, on the first
project.
round, I understand that the council was unanimous to move it forward.
correct.
And to get,
I can't even think of another ag property with this much pressure, with this much historic value or in the county.
Or even the building pressure, is that what you're referring to?
That's what I'm saying, the building
Yeah.
pressure.
Building pressure for
Yes.
the industrial building pressure to the north.
it's got a river runs through it.
Yeah.
The mid-lease residential building pressure all around
Yeah.
it really does that.
So if you're hoping to spend $1 million on it, but you're having to spend $1.5 million, it's in relationship with what you're dealing with, and that's the hard part. You're not, you may not see another one like this.
Right.
Not with this historical value. You're not gonna see that.
The immediacy of that pressure is.
Exactly.
I would propose I would move that we do 25% of the value up to 1.1. That gives them the opportunity to apply for Lee Ray McAllister funds, and know what they get, by the next funding source. I'd propose that we move that.
You're making a motion.
I make a motion.
Okay. Is there a
Would
second?
it be exactly that amount or up to that amount?
25% of the project up to $1 million, $1.1 million.
So committing to 25%?
Yeah.
And
I'd be more comfortable to set up to, in case there were other sources that came in,
Up to what?
up to 25%.
that's why he was saying 1.1 million. I think he's saying 25% up to 1.1 million. So if in the end the project appraises for more or what have you, we're still only paying 1.1 million, and it then might be only
But if it
22%.
appraises for less, or if other funding sources are found, would we be committing to 25%?
Yeah, I think we
Even
need
though
to,
other
I
money
think we
would be
need to. I don't think they're gonna get funding sources just based on the funding sources available, I think that we've gotta commit to 25%. That's my opinion.
Just thinking out loud, when I saw 37% as the county share, I was thinking that scored very high on historical, on ag, 2 or 3 other categories, but it didn't score on public access by design.
Yeah.
It's not, it didn't score in the gateway category by design. And if we're setting a precedent here, and I'm just thinking out loud here, at what point should the county be willing to pay the maximum? Now, there might be a project that comes in that all the benefit is within the county, and the county has to pay 100% to get it done.
Because no one else will.
Because no one else, it doesn't
Right.
check their boxes, but it checks all the county boxes.
Yeah, that's right.
So maybe in the 25% range, because it doesn't check all of the county's boxes, might be reasonable.
It does check most.
Pardon?
You're gonna have a hard time finding a project that checks every single box.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
I think it checks well, but I also think it checks Lee Ray McAllister well and NRCS well.
Yeah.
And I
There too.
think that's why we have to put something forward. And that's almost why I'm not putting all of it forward, is because I think the state ought to ante up on this one a little bit.
I agree with that. Even if maybe it takes them a couple of years in the budget, if they would commit to it,
Yeah.
the project might go forward with that.
I think it's a really good one for the state. It's
That's why I would be more comfortable if we set up to 25%, depending on other funding sources, and or 1.1. If they come up with 15%, then the county share would be 20.
I think they want to know what we're committing to.
They want the number.
They want the number from us, and that's why I think that we have to put the number out there. Like,
I feel comfortable at 1.25 million. Because of historical.
So if another funding source doesn't come through, the project's killed?
They come back, and we can talk about it again.
Well, that stipulation should be put in there, I think.
Well, that's always the case with every project.
Yeah.
If we got to know, if
What's the
we,
decision date for Lee Ray McAllister, because we wanna make sure that we can get this lined up for the.
Lee Ray McAllister's due in August 18.
And you know when the decisioning is?
The decision date won't be until September or late October.
Of the following year,
No, of this year. It probably won't be until October of this year that they'll make a decision.
which is before NRCS.
Is that at the same time? Yeah.
So that's perfect, isn't it?
No. No, not when you're playing with federal timelines, it's not ideal. No, you always want to be ahead of the next funding. That's why we're trying to decide what we're gonna do today.
Justin, you're being pretty quiet over there.
I was just thinking, yeah, the timing is if you miss it, then he's gotta come back and then you're gonna deliberate, and then go back to the county and then.
Running out of time.
And then you ran out of time and you missed it.
Yeah, but I don't want back against the wall.
Yeah.
So Eric made a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it to keep the discussion alive.
Okay, so then we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
My discussion is 1.25.
You'd like
An
to
amendment?
amend the motion,
Yes, I'd like to amend the motion to go to 1.25 million.
okay?
That was up to, is that right?
Yeah.
That's more than 25%, so I think we would want to amend the percentage if that's, if you're proposing that, I think you need to change the percentage as well.
Yes.
I would say that you would want to propose 1.25 divided by 4.1.
Whatever that number is.
Like 30%.
4.1 could change when they get appraisals and so forth, down the line.
So I would then ask if there's a second to the amendment? Yeah, 30%.
Okay, I'm not hearing a second, so the amendment dies. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Kendra, did you,
I'm just
any?
calculating in my head. Yes, I mean, I'm in favor of it, just trying to make sure it adds up.
What was the count on ayes?
I heard Eric and Claire. Did you say aye?
No.
Any opposed?
No, I oppose.
Kendra, do you oppose?
Just know that
Or
he's
would you-
opposing in a good way, not a bad way, guys.
No, I mean, if the choice is the 1.1 or nothing, then no, I'm in favor of 1.1, yes.
Okay. So you would vote yes for the,
Are you gonna abstain over there?
I'm not a voting member, is the
Oh,
problem.
you're not a voting member? Oh, I was looking for your vote. I'm sorry.
that's okay, because it's still, it's,
Conversation I had just a little while ago, to put it in perspective, that somebody just told me, how much is a baler? That's 500,000, and how much is a tractor is 500,000, so just to be able to do a alfalfa operation is $1 million. So there you go.
okay, so the motion passes, and the recommendation will go to the county council, and they can hear from the applicant at that time and continue the discussion and make a decision.
How do we address the question that they had on funds going towards these things? I'm totally okay with funds going, choosing to allocate funds towards these other categories.
That was my understanding. It's part
That was
of the.
my understanding of what we were voting
That
on.
we,
was the
yes, that we
bottom
can
line.
do that.
Yeah,
Gabe, does that make sense?
yeah.
And, I mean, for the Furmans, if,
I'm expecting, as far as what we just did, we're a non-binding committee, it's recommendation, I expect there'll be give and take. Council has statutory funding authority, so we're putting the ball in their court.
And now they get to figure out what actually happens next.
They could go
Right.
higher or lower.
Any other thoughts, Councilwoman Buse, at this point?
I think we'll have this on the July 23rd.
Yeah, it won't be tomorrow, but we can do it at the next one.
We already have our agenda published for tomorrow, so probably July 23rd.
Yeah,
If any of you would like to attend, it's
Great.
helpful to
yeah,
have members with
The 23rd at
Would
5
be-
o'clock here,
Mhm.
5:30.
July 23rd at 5.
and Stephen, if you don't mind, just a reminder ahead of the meeting to,
It
Okay.
is helpful to have, other members of COSAC there for,
it is.
just to help with some of the discussion as how you got to the decision and the recommendation that you're providing to council.
I'd like to thank the Furmans and Bear River Land Conservancy again for bringing this opportunity to the table.
Question on process, does that complete the second round of our application, just this funding vote? Is that the difference between first and second round, or where the project had so much documentation with the first round? Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think so, unless something in the process comes up that, we realize we should talk more about or scrutinize more in future projects, but, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
There is the final phase, right, where we bring you all the due diligence and we review the conservation easement deed with the county
Yeah.
Absolutely.
prior
Does that come here?
funding.
I think the other question. I think the other thing that we have the benefit on this one is NRCS is so involved in this particular one,
Intelligence.
that there's some scrutiny that we're free riding on. Not
Yes.
free riding on, but we're riding on versus if we were doing this 100%.
We'd be in deep,
Independently.
we'd be in deep water.
Yeah, this might be a little too casual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my experience with NRCS. They jump through all those hoops. they go through it, so.
I would say if this was the county funded, we'd probably want to review the language and the exact details of what's being restricted.
Yeah.
But where this is going to be heavily funded by NRCS, we'd want to see those terms
Yeah.
and confirm that we're also okay with those terms prior to funding.
Yeah, Claire just asked a great question, which is, you know, these next due diligence items and stuff like that, does that come back to the committee for review or something like that? Or is that really, at some point, it's, you know, it's legal, you know, it's in the county, yeah,
It
exactly.
goes in county attorney's office,
That's
probably.
attorney's office.
That might be beyond our charter as a group
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think
and range of expertise.
at least
and like,
some, if not all of those things.
Of the committee would,
Yeah.
you know, the intent of what you would want would be captured, and then the attorneys would
Yeah, and I think,
execute that.
and otherwise, we're just being informed of that
Yeah.
process and the outcomes, I would think, but wouldn't need to review or approve anything.
Yeah, I do think that this committee has some expertise that it can add, particularly with your background and others that the county attorney wouldn't have, and hopefully we capture some of those things in this process here.
I look forward to seeing what happens too, because that will inform us on the next application. We'll know kind of the ground rules a little better, the boundaries and the scope of things.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, here we are at 5:05. We aren't going to be rushed out the door like we have been at previous meetings, because there's not a meeting after this one. However, I do need to take off at 5:30, so I can pass the gavel over to Eric if we need to continue, or we can shoot for trying to be finished with the meeting around that time.
I have to leave at 5:30.
I think we try to end at 5:30.
Great,
Yeah.
let's do it.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I do have to leave. I don't
Yeah.
have any new information to report to the committee from the council.
Great.
So just any that can attend our next meeting on the 23rd, the next application will be presented. I encourage that.
Thank you.
And if you, do you have any questions for me as far as the committee goes?
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman.
Thanks for being here.
Yep,
We'll see you.
okay. All right, next item on our agenda is the first round application and discussion for the Zan Harris, Harris Farms application. And Stephen, just assuming you'll want to give an overview on this?
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't have a lot of background information on this quite yet. As you might have saw, this was added onto the agenda last week. The property owners who are here with us came in to meet with me and requested, they just had a bunch of questions, and after talking about the options of doing a pre-application versus filing an application, they decided to file an application. So I haven't been able to do, since it was last week, I haven't been able to do a full report yet.
Yeah.
But I kind of figured this would be a good time to have the property owner introduce it, potentially schedule a site visit since I filed
Great.
an application, and the next meeting, I would anticipate us being able to do the full report and scoring and all that other stuff that we like to do.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Thank you.
But I can give you a basic. This is a property that's out between Lewiston and Richmond.
Could you help me see the bigger context?
Yeah.
Maybe on the parcel map or something first. Sorry.
New leases in Richmond.
Pardon me?
Your new leases in Richmond, straight west of that.
Oh, the new lease,
New
okay.
Lee's grocery store.
Yeah.
Yeah, straight west.
The sewer pond,
Yeah, Richmond City Sewer Pond.
Yep, so those are the sewer ponds, Richmond.
the west
Yeah.
boundary is the river.
Cub River, boundaries, Cub River, that's Cub River there, the black line.
Yep, so that's the Cub River. So this is the project we're talking about.
Okay.
As I click
Great.
on that, so as we zoom out, we can kind of see where
Has a
we're at.
pivot on
Perfect.
it presently.
Thank you.
I live right across the river from it.
Reagan lived right up there. Right above see his house.
Yeah. Lewiston City is right across the river.
Okay, thanks. Sorry,
Can
sorry,
you go-
Stephen.
Now can you go to the other one that's a little more zoomed in?
Yeah.
the other, map you had
Oh, yeah.
with the red. So that I can see the parcels that, yeah, if you can put that up.
Yes, we had.
What are the other ponds on the property here?
Richmond sewer ponds, then.
The one on the property, was it
They're just,
irrigation?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And then the Cub River, what does the Cub River run at through there? Like, how much water's in the Cub River there?
Now, today?
Oh, I mean, just any time.
of year.
Does it ever go dry?
No.
Never dry?
It got close 2 years ago, but it's never gone.
There'll probably be 10 to 15 second feet at low water,
Yeah,
800 or 900 second feet in the spring.
it's pretty good in spring.
It meanders, their property meanders with the river and joins the river.
Okay, go ahead, Stephen. Thank you.
Let's see. So just a couple things of note. So I did include some of the maps that I typically have included. So this is the NRCS farmland area. So chunks of the property are not categorized, but several pieces are categorized as important farmland, either locally or at the statewide level. There are several waterways that are adjacent or standing water within the property, as we just kind of mentioned, and a few wetlands. When I talked to the applicant, they noted that this whole area is pretty wet, or they've dried it out since and may return it because it doesn't quite work with their pivot. And so there's.
So are they running a half pivot?
No, it's a full pivot. You just
Full-
can't- yeah, it's a full
Okay.
It just doesn't reach
But there's
the
that
whole
corner
space.
that it doesn't reach.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
It floods out every year. Just
Okay.
to irrigate. We're actually looking at putting it back into a wetland. Working with North Logan City on some section there right now, actually.
Okay.
Stephen, what are the criteria for that state important farmland?
I'd have to look it up again. I don't remember exactly what they look at, but I know some of it is soil conditions, whether it's or whether there's irrigation provided. There's a few criteria, but I can look that up and get back to you next
It
time.
would be similar to LISA criteria, not necessarily historical value
Yeah.
or.
It's like prime farmland versus statewide important versus locally important farmland.
Yep.
Designation, NRCS designations
They do it
are what those are.
according to
Soil types and
soil types,
and
growing
irrigation.
days.
It looks like the pivot area is used for different purposes. Is that right?
No. Agriculture. What do you mean?
Well, is some of it grazing or what,
Probably when that picture was taken, it was probably spring runoff, so you can't see, where you can't see the pivot tracks, are probably discs.
okay.
It wasn't.
So it's all
Yeah, it continues.
whatever you're raising on it, you raise the same thing on the
Yeah,
entire.
it might be split in half between corn and hay, or corn and wheat, or wheat and hay, but it's all farmed.
Okay.
When I pulled up wildlife, there's wetlands on the property, but I don't see, there was no other wildlife corridor that I could pull up on just GIS layers. I would assume along the river there are probably multiple species of birds, but that's where you see most of the wetland as well. For zoning, this is currently zoned as A10 within the county. You can see in Lewiston, that's zoned as A10 as well for their zoning. And then you can see there is some industrial in the area. That's what the purple is.
And is that Pepperidge Farms?
I'm not sure. Is that
Yeah.
Pepperidge Farms?
Pepperidge Farm,
That would be Pepperidge.
Mallow.
What are they doing out there?
A whole bunch of stuff.
Are they, I mean, that's
A new
not part
flour
of their,
mill to play, they're
warehouse
gonna
here.
make the flour on site,
okay,
and then they're increasing the size of Pepperidge Farm.
right.
I watch them, it's like watching an erector set every day.
It's a big project.
$180 million.
Yeah, I just didn't realize that their property came all the way out
Right back,
here,
right on
like,
that section.
They come
I'm familiar with the development because it had to come through the planning commission. but-
They own 350 acres, 380 with cattails and cricks and stuff.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, Pepperidge owns a chunk of land there.
okay,
They got a big footprint.
yeah.
So tell me about North Logan City. Are they having to mitigate?
Yes.
And so there's they're talking to you about mitigation on
Yeah.
that.
That 10 or 12 acres right on that river where the pivot doesn't reach, and it's wetland. It's been converted to farm ground from wetland, and it's very easy to convert back to wetland.
Okay, and that's gonna, they're looking, they need some help for
Yeah,
some
needs
land.
help with some projects.
What would be done if that was the case?
Still early stages. We met with them just last week, and we've actually been working with Jeremy at the Utah Department of Agriculture on this easement here. And that's where this got brought up to come here, as he brought that up to come here, because they'll fund up to 50% of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
you've already talked to them?
We've been talking with him, yeah. He said, come here, he's agreed to it, come here and get this. There's another thing they'll do, that he'll file the application, the ASAP application, so. But they committed up to 50% of the easement.
Great.
So,
You got a pretty good,
additional funding.
you got a pretty good chance at some substantial wetland out in there.
Yes.
That's why they're way interested. That river used to go straight through there. My great-granddad homesteaded the farm. My dad built the farm. It took him 3 years, three D8 Caterpillars. He rechanneled the river all around there, made the river, leveled out the farm pretty good so we can farm it. And my dad passed away. My last words to him: this farm's gonna stay in farm. It's never gonna see a house on it. And I've finally heard of this to try and help me out to keep it in the farm ground. And I'm gonna pass it on to my son, and I don't want a house on there. There'll never be one. So I'm just,
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
great.
it's been in the Harris family a long time,
yeah, we built the farm. My dad built the farm.
but wetlands is a real key there to get some help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's times when it's really wetland.
Yeah.
How does that work? Does Logan City contribute anything in this mix in doing that?
North Logan?
North Logan, sorry.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I'm sure
there's
they're
a value there that they,
How about that?
They're just looking for a couple acres. There's nothing major, just a couple
They're
acres.
looking for a couple, but meeting with, who was it?
Bob Thomas at Bioscience.
They might
BioWest.
12 acres. We might plant that whole 12 acres of pivot misses and have it ready, so if other cities need it, it can be converted all.
So it's all on standby.
Do like a mitigation bank?
Yes.
So there's gonna be.
So we met with them, we met with Jeremy, he says they can all try to tie it all together, so it's all can work as one.
So they would buy an easement, basically, it would be
Yes,
like a
we're
super
selling an
conservation
We're selling
easement,
North Logan City an easement.
and it would prohibit even farming then,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah.
you've seen some of that up in the Franklin area. The Hobbs family done the same thing to the state of Idaho.
On what river there?
Pardon me?
What river did they?
Cub River.
Cub River.
Just north of Franklin, right, when you come
Uh-huh.
down through that gully, they worked out a deal for mitigation on that.
Comes all the way from Franklin Basin down Cub River, or whatever it's called up there above Franklin, the Cub River.
Yeah.
Comes through Franklin, round the edge of Lewiston, down around us, down to Malga, and eventually gets to Bear River.
Yep. Stephen, you had a little bit more to
So
present?
The last slide or the last map I have is just the master plan trails in the area. That's what the lines represent, different types of trails. After talking to the applicant indicated on the application that they weren't proposing any public access this time. We did have a brief discussion about it, and I don't know if they've had any additional thoughts about.
Which side of the river is it on?
It's on the Harris side of the river.
Yeah, that's the
Is
side
it-
that we're looking at.
The green dotted line?
Yeah, so all these lines represent master plan trails in the area.
Oh, okay.
What is, tell me about the green one, what is that? Not a name for it, or?
Yeah, so we have a master plan trail that goes along the Cub River.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think.
Improved pathway is all it is.
Yep.
It would be you could make it into an improved trail pretty easy, but I don't know how they designate them.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to look.
Got
and
access
just
off
see
that
if
state
that's
highway
a proposed,
too
I think
there.
it's a proposed paved trail. based off of, because this is off the county key, but I'd have to look. Like I said, I haven't been able to do a full review on this. I just put together a couple of maps.
It was late Wednesday.
Late Wednesday, what was sent between now and Wednesday, last Wednesday?
The map says it's non-paved, says
Okay.
non-paved multi-use.
That would make sense.
It'd be non-paved.
Yeah. And so you weren't proposing to have access, but are you opposed to talking about it at
No,
least, or?
not opposed to talking about it. Like, for me, he can speak more. Me personally, walking, I would have no issues.
I've never told nobody they can't hunt pheasants on my ground. I mean, ducks, pheasants, as long as they come to me for permission, just so I know who's down there, so
Sure.
irrigation lines don't get hurt or my machinery or something.
Vehicles going down.
I'm all, you know, I've got a lot of friends, relatives, that go hunt geese down there, they hunt pheasants,
Yeah.
and, you know, they walk their dogs. As long as I know it's there, I just don't want a public highway driving down there.
Sure.
Through the farm to go do that.
Should that come up, I could see I mean, there's value there separate
Yes.
from the easement that we're talking about that would be very interesting.
Well, they got good public access, that state highway between Richmond and Trenton runs right up the borders of their property.
Yeah, that would be,
I mean,
we
actually-
don't get many opportunities to get those pieces.
Agreed, and I mean, even just having projects that don't prohibit that opportunity in the future is a step in the right direction, I think. You know, and if more can be done, great. If it can be included as part of the easement, you know, and not that it's, you know, that we have to design it right now and figure out where it goes or whatever, but that, you know, the landowner would be willing to allow for that, if it's.
This isn't
meets
Richmond
conditions.
City.
No, it's in the county.
Yeah, it's good.
I would propose with this project that Landis proposes a offer as well to the landowner for a right of way.
For what we'd be looking for,
Yeah.
we can look at that.
So maybe the county will give some feedback on.
Like there might
What-
be an
what-
additional amount that
so
they're
you
willing
would-
to.
Know what to expect.
That'd be in addition to COSAC funding then?
No, it would come from the COSAC funding, but from the trails portion. Yeah, I mean, we've seen no proposals or anything on the trails portion of it. And I think the waterway makes that particularly interesting. If you look at that, could it be a standalone piece? And would people enjoy it as a standalone piece? And I think that they could. And it is on the on the county master plan.
Especially if it connected down to the road.
Yeah, to the road, I mean, now we're missing a piece to the road, aren't we?
That's right. Yeah, there would be.
Okay.
But we could potentially, I mean, if we were able to secure some of these easements,
That's Richmond City, owns that.
yeah.
On the south or on the north?
To the south, to the road.
The road.
They got
That one would be almost a no-brainer, we don't need to buy that.
You think so?
Yeah, they own between us and the road.
Yeah, that wet corner.
West of the sewer.
It certainly makes the project more compelling, right?
Oh, yeah, all of a
It-
sudden,
It
yeah.
helps to check that box.
No, I'm sure.
Okay, well, this is great. I think, what needs to happen next, it sounds like, and this is what you're anticipating, Stephen, is we'll put a staff report together, arrange for a site visit with the landowner to go look at it, and then the committee can score it as a follow-up. Does that sound good to everyone?
Yeah, I'd love to know what Richmond City thinks, like the value this adds as well, from Richmond City's perspective.
And I typically will I'll send the notice out or I'll send the application out to Lewiston and Richmond.
Yeah.
So they have a chance to, because this falls within
Their
their annexation
annexation.
areas, so.
Yeah, send it to Lewiston. Stir them boys up out there.
I gotta imagine that Richmond would appreciate, you know, protected lands surrounding their
Yeah.
infrastructure.
Right.
Yeah. So many developments going on, just keep it up in the hills, it's not gonna happen down on my river, down on my farm.
Well, yeah, they might need to expand something down there or have that, yeah. And then it's
Getting
protected.
access off of a state highway in today's world is huge. You know, you got all this land up in here, but it's all landlocked.
What do you see in terms of wildlife out there?
A bunch.
Deer, pheasants, ducks, everything. Oh, it's big.
You put
I
wetlands,
seen a coyote run through the other day, foxes.
Come on, there's elk across the street.
Yeah, there is. Whole herd of elk across the street, yeah.
No
if
kidding.
you put wetland in there, used to be the best pheasant hunting around.
It used to be,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. It's prime pheasant, yeah.
You see quite a few deer every night down there.
All the
Yeah.
pheasants fly from
There's
my
deer
side of the
running
river
around.
to his.
They come down from the hills to feed, I mean, there's more feed down around there.
Yeah.
What are you guys typically growing there?
Hay, corn. Typically corn, just because it floods out every spring, so.
You sell it off or you use it?
Sell it.
Is this the only land you own here?
No, a little bit more by the train tracks.
Yeah, just up by the train track.
You see that yellow?
That little yellow 25 acres up there on the train tracks. Then Pepperidge owns everything in between there.
You'd have a big block of easement. Pepperidge is not gonna let anybody out there.
No, Pepperidge is, yeah, so it'd be a good open spot forever. Pepperidge isn't gonna ever allow houses. It'd be great.
It sounds like they use it for, they're growing product there, right?
Yeah, I rent ground, I rent 100 acres and then Gibbons and Lewiston rent the other 200 from them.
Okay.
It's all in farm ground.
Any other questions or comments for the applicant?
I want it, give me the date, cause I wanna be there.
I was thinking we'd look at sometime in the week of the 22nd.
Yeah. Zan will buy us treats at Maverick on the corner. Or maybe
So,
we-
I mean, I think we've had a pretty regular schedule every 2 weeks. We've been trying to move these things along, so the week of the 22nd would be the 22nd, I would think.
Okay. I should be around.
For either a meeting or a site visit, you know, but meaning staff report in hand and site visit.
Yeah, I was thinking we could potentially do a site visit that week, and then we would do our next meeting in the first week in August, and we could do the scoring and do a more detailed evaluation.
Okay.
How does about 3:30 on the 22nd work for you guys?
3:30 on the 22nd?
We move pipe before we get there.
It's not, no. Site visit then?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think, you know, Stephen will confirm everything, but, yeah.
Okay, I have that on my calendar, and we'll schedule.
I think, Landis, to the extent that you guys, your team, you and your team can give some guidance on maybe what's identified here on the master plan trail network for trail through there would be helpful.
I really think we look at this as an opportunity for that piece of things.
So what all would that include in that trail? Just right away, people can walk through there and stuff?
Just a right of way in.
At some point, I mean, the trail would be, you know, constructed. It sounds like it's contemplated as a natural surface trail. So it wouldn't be paved or something like that. And I think we're asking the county trail planner to articulate what that would be so that you could see it and we could see it too. What does this trail look like? What does it mean in terms of uses? It's gonna be, it's non-motorized, I can tell you that.
And not interfere with your operations.
Right. And it's not figuring out the precise alignment right now or anything like that. It's just, this would be the idea.
Yep.
And that would be separate fundage, if that makes sense, yeah.
I think as we go through the second application, we could pull those apart
Yeah.
I mean, it all comes from the same pot, but.
Yeah, but I'd like to see it in that separate application because someone needs to be responsible for that.
Yeah.
It could be that Richmond City would be responsible for it in the end.
Maintain
It'd be it'd be your neighbors basically would be using it, but I mean, there's some value to that in terms of like, bird watchers or whatever as they go along.
Or fishers
Or what?
fishermen or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, fishermen. And the other thing is, it looks like some of it would kind of be through the wetland area,
The intention is it follows the river, right? I mean, in general.
Yeah,
it's-
they can't
it's-
go up through the middle where it
Correct.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Yeah.
It needs to be a win-win.
That's where you want to be anyways, is following the river.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they follow the river.
But I think that ends up making the conservation easement more interesting as well, because your nice green space you're creating on the right gives people enjoyment as they're enjoying both sides. And then we want to preserve that rather than walking along houses, they're walking along green space. So.
Great. It's a compelling application, Mr. Harris, so thank you for bringing it forward. It sounds like we'll have a chance to go and see it in a couple weeks. So, thank you very much. All right, we're nearing our time, but let's just quickly touch on item number 7, the gateway category, immediate views and parcels. And we saw some email exchanges, and Claire prompted us, and Eric chimed in as well. And so I love the idea of, a couple of committee members or more maybe taking on this as a separate task, so maybe with the intent of kind of moving this along.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at, is I'm just not 100% sure where to move forward or what the committee wants. And so even if a couple of the committee members and myself want to meet, we can kind of hammer out what we want to see, whether that's like a flyer that's sent out to everybody, or specifically contacting a couple of property owners along it to see if they're interested. I think we could maybe handle that in a smaller group and kind of come up with a plan and bring it back to the full committee.
Yeah, sounds like Clara and Eric are both interested, and if
Would
others
there
are.
be a third member? We can't have 4, but there'd be a third member.
They'd be more than welcome,
Yeah.
Or a non-voting member,
Yeah. And with Stephen, maybe a site visit there would be helpful.
Yeah, we could go drive through some of the gateways together and.
Yeah, and I mean, and this would be a good time for everybody to chime in if they think I'm out of line. I have reached out to just a couple of them to make sure that they knew as you come through the
Sardine.
Dry Lake area. I've looked up who those people are and just let them know, and just so that the wheels are spinning. I'm not advocating for that we fund anything other than that those people know that there's an opportunity in what we're doing, because there is development pressure on that whole area all the way through the gateway. So they've been there's been people approached, and
Great. Okay. Well, thanks for offering to help out with that, and I guess others chime in if you want to participate on that committee, but it sounds like, Stephen, you'll have some follow-up with
Yep, I'll set a
Eric,
meeting
Claire.
with both of you, and we'll come up with a plan.
Okay.
If we do go out together, you could let everybody know in case somebody else wants to go along.
Yeah, we'll see if there's a third that wants to tag along, or even if we want to do a full quorum to go visit.
And if we have a quorum, it just becomes public, right?
I mean, the thing is that ultimately, the idea here is to sort of move this along to a point that it can be brought back to the full committee, and we can, decide like what we want to do for next steps, right? And, which means, I think, reaching out, doing some outreach to property owners in these gateway areas, right? And just as you did, let them know that there's this opportunity here, and we hope you're interested in apply.
I think so many people too are a little bit they don't understand a process or someone to reach out to. I mean, that's why I do like with Gabe, for example, if we can help with that, that's what Ravalli County said, if you can help out with this, then we can keep doing projects, so.
Yeah, good. Okay, I think that's all of our agenda items for this meeting, so anybody have anything else, or?
I just want to let everybody know we've hired a new countywide planner. They're starting this week, who will now be attending and being one of the main staff support for the committee. And so they'll be taking Annika's position, if you remember Annika.
Great. Okay.
So,
Good.
yeah, so we'll have you meet him next. He'll probably be to the site visits actually. So you'll
Great.
meet him in a couple weeks.
That sounds good. Who's that person?
His name is Brandon Chase Bell. He's a planner. He does some work in. He's currently a city planner along the Wasatch Front.
Okay. Great. Anything else, committee members?
Okay. Wow, what a meeting.
Nothing. We'll stand adjourned.